here for the John Brockington Kidney Foundation Golf Tournament at the beautiful La Costa Resort. I'm at the beautiful La Costa Resort here for the John Brockington Foundation.
Well, it's a great cause, great friends to be around, and you know, it was, when I got told about it and invited to it, it was an easy decision for me to come out.
Hey everyone, this is Jessica back with the A-List television show, and I am riding along with
Vincy Glenn.
Vincy, I know you get asked to do many events like this. What is it about the John Brockington Foundation that made you want to come out and play today?
Well, it's not any particular organization. I support my friends and the things that they believe in, and whatever cause that they may have in their lives that they believe in and want to give back to. I just try to support them in the things they do.
The first annual John Brockington Foundation Golf Tournament. I also want to give a nice shout out to my friend Willie Buchanan, who is a very good golfer, for helping us out tonight, and to my buddy Pete Shaw, and Vince. Is Vince still here? Vince Glenn, thank you for coming out, my friend.
I don't mind doing my struggle. Good live for putting them out of the golf.
You guys really deserve a shout out. They defend the nation, they keep us free, so please give. Michael's here to join us for this.
First place team with the same score, one on the tiebreaker, a team of Don Pinkler, Jim Salvar, Bob Minster, and Jim Allison. Did you guys come?
Okay, at this time I'd like to call up my very lovely wife Diane. She's going to make some remarks on organ donations' impact on tissue donation.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you. I know many of you are here because you love to golf, and you may not know much about our organization, so very briefly, I am going to tell you about what JBF is about. Tonight, there are 1,750 San Diegans waiting for the phone to ring, and they are waiting to find out if tonight's their lucky night and that an organ has been found for them. If you look in the middle of your tables, you will see a pretty devastating report card. It was released 2 days ago, and I excerpted it. You'll see on the top that California has more people waiting on the transplant list than any other state. And if you look at the two colored boxes, the good news is at the top, which is lots of green that you see, and if you look at the bottom, even though California has more people on the list than anyone else, 21,000, we are in the bottom 5 states for organ donor registration. And look at who's beating us: Alaska, Wyoming. What's with those folks from Montana and Utah and Wisconsin that they actually make their wishes known? They are saying, when I don't need my organs anymore, they're yours. So when we look at our 1,750 neighbors, family members, friends who are waiting, they're going to wait longer than in other states. And this is something that doesn't have to happen. tomorrow or Monday or whenever you have to go to the DMV, only 1 out of 3 Californians will choose to register their wishes. And this is something we can all change. And I would like to call up Mr. Alan Sorkin, who will also comment on this problem because it's an easy one to fix.
So I have a couple statistics to share with you also. Operations come in sectors. When I was a child, it was all about tonsillectomies and appendectomies. When my kids were younger, it was about tubes in the ears. Today, the baby boomers are seeing knee replacements, hip replacements, shoulder replacements. I can tell you what's coming is kidney transplants and people hooked up to machines for the rest of their lives. If you think about obesity today, and 38% of our children, 5th, 6th, and 6th grade, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, are clinically obese or seriously overweight. That will result in a huge amount of kidney failure. There are 19 people a day die waiting for a kidney. And 10% of Americans, or 20 million people, have chronic kidney disease. I learned this because 38 years ago I was diagnosed with kidney disease. I was told it wasn't a big deal, that it would take years for my kidneys to fail, but I had a monitor. And so once a year I would go in for a test. It was okay. Until about 3 years ago, where my doctor told me that if I didn't want to be hooked to a machine, I better find a donor. I was very fortunate. I had 9 friends and family members who offered me a kidney. One by one, none of them worked out. Several got cold feet. Several had medical conditions that prohibited them from doing that. And I was pretty dejected when a friend of mine told me about a program that was on Good Morning America that morning about a Good Samaritan who donated a kidney to a stranger. They suggested a website. I went on the website. It was called matchingdonors.com. And they claimed to have lots of donors, and if I could tell a compelling story, I might get a donor. I actually contacted several, had several tests, and for one reason or another it didn't work out until I read about a 23-year-old girl who said, I have 2 kidneys, I only need one, I want to save somebody's life. I contacted her, she flew out to San Diego, had the tests, and 2.5 years ago, on July 7th, 2010, I got that kidney. I tell you this because becoming an organ donor after you're gone is easy. But, and becoming a living donor is much more difficult, and that's a personal decision everybody has to reach. I will only tell you that my donor says that it's the single best thing she's ever done in her life. So, that's my story. I hope some of you will take me up on it and become a donor.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, I can tell you, living donation is fairly easy. I got to believe deceased donation is even easier. So, I want to introduce 2 people who are great examples of getting involved in a local organization, because JBF, our focus is on those 1,750 people here, and the many, many more who will be on dialysis, as Alan indicated. We provide food vouchers, we provide transportation, we provide protein supplements, but I want you to hear from one of our newest board members, Dennis Bork, who will answer the simple question, why would you devote your time and energy and resources to the John Brockington Foundation? Dennis?
Thanks, Diane. started on the board with John Brockington Foundation about 2 years ago. And the reason I did it is I was diagnosed with kidney disease 55 years ago. And as soon as I turned about 15 years old, I went out and got an education on how to live with kidney disease. And, you know, when you're 15 years old, you don't eat right. You start drinking a lot of beer when you're 21. And you don't know how your kidneys work. So what I did is I went out and educated myself and learned how to take care of myself. And I was lucky enough to get to the point that at 56 years old, I had to get a transplant, but I had to get both kidneys removed before I had that done. So I was also lucky enough that I had 12 people offer me their kidney. And I've got 5 brothers, and luckily one of them matched. And I have to say, having that many people offer that, it kind of touches your heart, because it's a big thing to give up a kidney, but when it's one of your brothers and he reminds you of it constantly that he gave you a kidney. But it worked out fine with me. I pushed it right to the point that I was going to go on dialysis, but my brother came in, went through a bunch of tests with me. He was in the hospital for one night, and he had a 3-inch cut, and he was out playing golf a week later. And a lot of people don't know that about being a donor for a kidney transplant. So I ended up hooking up with the Brockington Foundation because we focus not only on transplant patients, but dialysis patients. And if you go on dialysis, I mean, think of it, your kidneys shut down completely. And between 3 days a week sessions where you're going 6 hours hooked up to a machine, you don't pee between those sessions. So think about it, you're not allowed to drink. You come into the session and they pretty much, for the dialysis session, you drain all the blood out of your body, run it through a filter and go back and try to lead a life. And it's pretty hard to do that. Chances are you're going to miss your job, or you're going to end up losing your job. And you have to worry about Medicare and deal with that. So the Brockington Foundation is kind of like the safety net in between all that of Medicare and everything else. And what I found with what we do out there is that we support people to get to their dialysis treatments. We get them protein supplements. You know, we've got coaching where we can help people pre and post transplant and dialysis patients. And this is something that you know, I'm involved in this all around the United States, and there's not, I don't know of any other groups other than the Brockington Foundation that's here in San Diego where we take care of people like this. So you should be really proud that this group does this in San Diego. So that's my story. Mark's going to come up and throw his side on it too. So thank you very much for helping me.
I know everybody's tired, so I'm not going to be long, but I'll just introduce myself quickly. I'm a physician in San Diego, and I spent the first part of my career taking care of post-operative kidney transplant patients. A few years later, I became the kidney transplant patient. 2.5 years ago, I was operated and transplanted from a living donor at the Mayo Clinic. There are 3 spectacular transplant programs here in town: University Hospital, Sharp, and Scripps. I happen to have been raised in Minneapolis, and there, when you go to health education in junior high school, the only thing they really teach you is that you're not allowed to die until you've been to Mayo Clinic at least once. So when I got real sick, that's where I went and was transplanted. I was fortunate enough to have a living donor, and to give you an idea how easy it is, our family's involved in rodeo, and this fellow was from South Texas and a rodeo cowboy. And when he first volunteered to be my donor, I said, "Link Thompson, you have no idea what you're even talking about." And he said, "That may be true, but I figure it can't be any worse than falling off a bull." And he indeed was right, and the same sort of story. I want to make a pitch for living donation for the following reason. Number one, as all of you now are, I think, are going to be touched by one piece of information or another that you hear today. As long as you're going through the thought process about the possibility of organ and tissue donation, think about it not only as a red dot on your driver's license, But consider also the idea of living donation. Why does that make any difference? Well, first of all, you guys as donors are the very foundation of all kidney transplantation. We don't do kidney transplants unless we have donors. And we have two different options. We can have donors after life is finished, and we can have living donors. Why are we interested in living donors? The simple reason that is a living donor kidney is twice as good as a cadaver kidney that's donated after death. So it makes a huge difference to the recipient. And you know we've got 100,000 people on the waiting list now. What's the downside? What's the risk? Well, the risk basically is if you look at long-term survival, there is no difference. We've got 2 kidneys. Apparently we only need 1. 1 live birth in 750 live births is a child born with 1 kidney. That's pretty darn common. Why didn't you know that? The reason you don't know that is because it doesn't make any difference if you're born with just 1 kidney. So we know that longevity is there. We know that the short-term risk is basically the same as the risk you take for having a 40-mile commute to work for a year. Whatever that risk is the same as the risk with living donation. We all want to make a difference. We all want to leave a legacy. Imagine the legacy and the difference you feel if you know that you saved a life. And without making a complicated story take up more of your time, let me tell you now that living donation is no longer just 1 life, but it starts a chain, it starts a domino effect. And recently there was a chain of 60 lives that were involved by a single spontaneous or altruistic donor in New York who said at age 45, I'd like to do something for somebody, and got in touch with a system like this. So we can define for you the risk. We can absolutely define for you the benefit. I can tell you what it feels like to save a life, but I can't begin to comprehend what it feels like to save 60 lives and the family members that go with those people. So tonight, while you're thinking about this and in your idle moments, sitting at your lights and before you fall asleep, as you decide, do I want to sign that driver's license card or not, I urge you to make that thought process and your own analysis and your own way of looking for how are you going to make that difference in the world. Here's an opportunity. Please think about it seriously, because the world of kidney failure and kidney patients really is depending on you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Was that some good information received tonight?
Yeah.
Yes. Does it make you think?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you before I got transplanted, before Diane gave me a kidney, and we were just friends then, okay? We were friends who hadn't spoken for 10 months, okay? When she found out I was in the hospital, she came, and the next day she wanted to be my donor. And I'm telling you, it changed my life. It really does. I mean, she gave me my life back. Simply because I was 7 days away from being dead when they found me. And my creatinine levels was 44.4, and Dr. Waddell can tell you what that means. And they told me that there's no reason she should be alive. And this woman gave me a kidney, and she was perfectly healthy. I was the one that wasn't compliant. She was, and she gave me a kidney, and now we're married, and we're very happily married. It's good. I'd like to thank our speakers, Alan, Dennis, and Dr. Mark Waddell for those great remarks, and I hope some of that stuff just seeps into your memory and your consciousness and it causes you to do certain things, okay? All right, now Willie's going to come up.
Okay.
And,
John kind of stole my story because I was going to tell you a little story about John and Diane, but, you know, they have been great friends before all of this happened, and it was just great that they eventually got together and got married, and happily married too. So again, thank you, John and Diane, for all the contributions that you do for that John Brockington Foundation. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Schwartz. Great tournament for a great cause for great people. Do it again next year.
My name is Edward Michalski. Had a great time in this tournament, and hopefully we'll do it again next year.
Great golf tournament, great food, great people, lots of fun. We had a wonderful time. Thanks very much.
This was a lovely event. Thank you so much. We'll see you next year.
We'll be back next year.
Bye.